In today's video, I'm going to show you how to use the Thinkorswim Analyze tab so you can build a position and look at your risk reward before you place the trade instead of placing the trade first and then having your risk graph appear in this window. So in order to do that, the first thing you do is you come up here and you'll click on the Analyze tab, which is right here. And since right now there's no trades placed, I would then click on Add Simulated Trades, which is this tab right over here. So if I click over there, it's going to bring up the option chain where I would select what I'm looking for. So let's say I want to use April 21st options, which are 46 days out. So this opens up this window where it's showing me a certain number of different strikes. The call side is over here and the put side is over here, and here it's showing you the strike prices right in this area here. Now, if you wanted to expand this because you wanted to see more strike prices, you would come up into this middle section here where it says strikes 12, and they have some default settings where you can pick a small number and just see 4, or you can go up to 14, or you can put all, which would bring a pretty large number of them depending on the stock and the position, the month and the strike. Or you can type in a certain number here. So let's say you didn't want 14, you wanted a little bit more. You could type in the number 20, and it would show you the 20 strikes that are surrounding the current stock price. Let's say I want to build a call where I just want to buy a call. The way you would go about it is you come over here, and I want to buy the 140 call. So I would come over here and just left click on the ask price, and it builds a position here where it's giving me the ask price. By default, if you're buying a single option or selling a single option, if you're the buyer, it's going to put the ask price down here. That doesn't mean that's what the price is that you have to use when you send the order. You can adjust that price up or down a few cents before you send an order. If you're selling, I would come over here and just click on the bid price, and it'll give me a sell order down here at the bottom. And notice how it's giving me the bid price down here, $285. Now, one other thing, if you need more room because you're building a number of positions to look at down here, you can come over here and just drag this window to give you a little more room down on the bottom part of the screen. Now, what if I was going to do a spread trade? Let's see how that works out when I do a spread. So let's say I wanted to buy a debit spread. I want to buy the 140, 145. So if I come over here and buy the 140, you come over to vertical, and it by default is giving me a price of 174. Now this 174 is not the bid or the ask price. When you do a spread, it's actually taking the mid price of the 140s, the 140 call, and subtracting from it the mid price of the 145 call, and it comes up to a value of 174. Now again, if you wanted to place this trade, perhaps you're expecting the market to go a little higher or a little lower, and you want to adjust your trade where, let's say you wanted to buy this on a pullback where you wanted to adjust your price that you're willing to pay down a little bit. So maybe you can lower the price a little bit, figuring on the next pullback you'll get your order filled at a slightly better price. And when you have a position built in here, these checkboxes here only mean that these are the ones that are going to be displayed in your risk graph. If I come up here to the risk graph, notice how it's showing me all three positions right now. It's showing me that I bought the 140 call, it's showing me that I sold the 140 call, and then it's showing me that I bought a spread. So essentially it's really just showing me the spread position because these top two are negating each other. So let's uncheck these three positions now so that we have a clean screen again. So I've actually placed the positions down here in the lower section, but when I check them or uncheck them, that's when they'll affect what I'm seeing on the risk graph. So if I wanted to look at just the long call, I can click on that. If I wanted to look at just the short call position, I can click on that and see the picture for that. And if I wanted to see what my risk picture looks like for the debit spread, I can click on that. Now, what if I wanted to do a credit spread or an iron condor position? How would I go about that? Of course, you could build it by building all 4 legs separately like we just did the single options. But if you did that, in that case, it would give you the worst price for the long calls, and it would give you the worst price for the short calls. So it really wouldn't depict what you would actually pay. And of course, you could adjust the prices, but you don't need to build it in that fashion. Just to be known that you could do that and then keep all of those separately if you wanted to. But it's probably more advantageous to build them as 2 credit spreads, or perhaps even as 1 position in Iron Condor. I prefer to do the 2 credit spreads so I know what I'm getting for each side. So let's go back to the Add Simulated Trades tab. And let's say I wanted to build a credit spread trade where perhaps I'm selling the delta 30 options on each side. So let's start with the put side here, and I come over here and here's my delta column, and it's showing me delta 28, so that's the closest to delta 30. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to right click. Since I'm selling, I'm going to right click on the bid, and here it says Analyze Buy Trade, and here it says Analyze Sell Trade. So because I'm doing a sell trade, I'm going to come over here and then I'm going to pick vertical because I'm doing a vertical spread. A credit spread is a vertical spread. And if you wanted other types of positions, which we can look at in another video, we would just scroll down and look at some of these other features here. But right now we're just doing a vertical spread that we're selling, and I just click on this here. And it's going to put the 135 put, which is the one that I right clicked on, which was over here, and it's going to give me the next strike available on a lower strike. So because that's the 130, then this may coincide with what I wanted. But what if I wanted a $10 wide spread? Then I would just come down here where the 130 is, and I could change it to the 125 if I wanted to. But for now, we're going to leave it as a $5 wide because I would actually prefer it that way. But in case you ever need to change it, it's very easy to change. You just come over to the actual strike and click on it, and it brings up the menu for you. Also, when you have the position built, even though I started on the April 21st option chain, I can actually come over here and change the month, or put it to a weeklies. I could come over here, instead of doing the April 21st spread, I can do the April 13th. As long as the strikes are available, it'll come up here and give me the price. If the strikes that I'm using down here were not available in that particular expiration that I'm choosing, then it would not come up as a valid trade. It would say not available. And over here we have the number of contracts that you're buying. And this is something that you can have the default changed. The default, I believe, is set at 10 contracts, but if you want to change this number, because let's say you normally sell 4 contracts or 2 contracts or 6 contracts or 5, it really doesn't matter what the number is. What you do is you come up to the Setup tab up here, and you click on that, and then click on Application Settings right over here. And once you get there, you come over to Order Defaults. And in the Order Defaults tab, you're going to have some customizable features for stocks, options, futures. But let's say for your stock positions, you want the default quantity, which is default. The default on this is 100 shares, and it also raises in 100 share increments. Now, perhaps you wanted to change this to 50 share increments. So it would start at 100, but every time you hit the increment up or down button, it would change by 50. And you could make this be whatever you want. It could be 10, it could be 20. So right now I have it set at 50, and I have my order default set at 100. And this is just a window. It sets up in case you accidentally hit the wrong number and you want to make sure you don't inadvertently buy more shares than you would ever consider buying. So it's a little safeguard that you could put in. Let's say you've never traded more than 500 shares before, and you would want to maybe set this to 500. And this way, if you're putting in a number that's more than that, it'll give you a warning about that. And then the default order type, you can have limit or market, or some of the other choices, stop or stop limit, trailing stop. I recommend to leave it set at limit. This way you're not using a market order unless you actually take the time to select it. The limit order will protect you much more. And when you do market order, you're at the mercy of the market maker, where you're just saying, give me the worst price if I'm a buyer, and give me the worst price if I'm a seller. So the limit order is going to help you define the price you want. You may not get filled right away, but you're still going to be buying or selling the position on your terms. Now coming over to the options tab, we have more choices where we can use these for our option prices. And since we were talking about the 5 contracts changing that, let's say that I want my default. All right, they have some defaults here. They have 2 contracts, 5 contracts, 10 contracts. Maybe I want my default to be 2 contracts, and I want it to increment up by 2s. So let's say, and the maximum I want to ever order maybe is, well, we can leave that at 50, but you can change it and use any of the pre-selectable ones here, or you can type in any number you want here. Let's say I wanted it to be 60. I can just type in 60. And when I come down here and hit apply settings, what's going to happen is it's not going to change what's happening here, but let's say I was to go build this trade again. Notice how this time it defaulted to the 2 contracts, and now as I come over here to increment up or down, it's changing it by a quantity of 2. And just to show you for the stock trade, if I was to come up here and just click on the ask price of the stock price here, it would default to giving me 100 shares. And what did we say was the increment we were going to use? It was going to be 50 shares. So if I come up here and just hit the plus button, it's going to increment up by 50 shares at a time, and it's going to increment down by 50 shares at a time. And like I said, you can change that at any time by just coming up here to the setup and the application setting tab, and then order defaults. And once you've set what you want for the different items here, for stocks, for options, or futures, whatever you're trading, then you hit apply settings and it'll take you back to your Analyze tab. So let me clean up a little down here. Let's get rid of the stock position, and let's get rid of some of these extra positions, and let's just work on building the call side credit spread so that we can have both sides of our Iron Condor position built. So we're going to do 4 contracts on this trade. So even though our default is 2, I'll just increment up the new call side position to 4 once we build it. The delta 30 option, the closest to delta 30 on the call side would be the 145. So let's see what kind of risk picture we get by selling the 145. All right, now see how I just inadvertently left clicked on the bid price, and it's no harm done. What happens is it defaulted to a single option position where I was selling the 145, and I just come over here and X that out and come back up here and right click on the bid price. So when you left click on the bid price, it's just going to build that single option position, but if you right click on the bid price, it's going to then open up this menu so that you can now come here, analyze sell trade, because I'm looking to sell the credit spread. If I was going to be buying the spread or buying a debit spread, I would come up here. But for this particular trade, we're going to be selling the call spread. So I'm going to come over here and come over to vertical. And once again, it sold the 145, and the next strike that it put, I just verified that it's the one I was looking for. I was looking for $5 wide, and since $5 wide is the very next strike, that's the one that it pre-populated for me. And it also gave me 2 contracts, which is what I had set the default to. So I'm going to change this to 4 contracts, and I just increment down 1 time because my default now is set to increment down by 2 at a time. Let's say you wanted to do 5 contracts for some reason. You can still come up here and edit this number to be a 5, and I can then come up here and edit this number to be a 5. So if I wanted 5 contracts, I can easily do it. And the increment button is then going to increment again by 2 from where it is that you left off. So in order to go back to 4, I can't use the increment button because of the way I've set my defaults, but I can easily come back here, highlight that, and click 4. And the same thing on this one. So once I've done that, let's actually take a look at the Iron Condor position risk picture. And one of the reasons I set them up this way is just so I can see the credit I'm getting for both sides. So if I come up here to risk profile, it actually shows me a picture of my Iron Condor. But it's not really showing me all of the information I'd like to see. I would like to see more of my expiration legs and on my long options, but the screen isn't showing that to me right now. So what can I do about that? On the Thinkorswim platform, you actually have 2 ways of dragging the screen and adding more data or shifting it from one side to the other. Now, if I look at this, area here, this main window, if I take my mouse and just left click and hold anywhere in the screen, I can slide it over to see the part that I want, left or right. I can just move it over as far as I want to one side or to the other side. But what if I want to see more data, to see from maybe 130 to 150 or maybe 125 to 155? If I left click and hold here and move it to the right, it actually decreases the price points that I'm able to see. And if I drag it all the way to the left, I can increase to see what I want. Now remember, I said before that I wanted to see maybe down to 125. So in order to do that, you have to do it in 2 steps. If I want to get down to 125, that would be 7 lower than the 132. So let's say I wanted to see from 125 to 155. If I drag this over so that I can view 7 more than I want to on the right side, then I can just release it and then come up to this other window again and left click and hold and then slide it over so that I'm shifting it now to where I can see the 155 and the 125. So here it's showing me my Iron Condor position. It's showing me that on the $5 wide spread, combination of the 2 credits that I'm receiving is $1.59. So if you look on the risk picture, right up here, this value, you're going to see it over here in this window right over here. So I'm going to highlight this area for you, and then I'm going to drag my mouse back over to this area, and you could see that number showing 636, which is 4 times my credit that I'm receiving of $1.59. And it's also showing you what is my risk on the trade, which is 1,364. And then the pink line is actually showing you current day prices. Now in another video, we'll go over how to use some of the other features in this program, some of the calendars, like this calendar here and this calendar down here, and some of the ways that you can use these features to analyze what would happen to your trade if price moved, or if time goes by. You can actually see what the value of your position would be if a week goes by or if 2 weeks go by. The Thinkorswim Risk Graph and Analyze tab is a valuable tool where once you play around with it and just get used to building your positions, you have to work with it for a period of time like anything else. It just takes a little practice, and then you become proficient at it, and it just becomes second nature to you, where you're maneuvering around without too much trouble. The great part about this platform is that it's set up to where a beginning user can use a small subset of the features and become good at them, and that may be all they need right now. But as you improve and get more in depth into your trading career, you may want more tools available, and the platform has them, but it doesn't force you to use them or force you to use something complex until you're ready for it. And then when you start turning on some of those other features, and I don't mean turning them on, I just mean using them, they're all there available for you. You'll find that as a beginning trader, an intermediate trader, or even a professional trader, this platform has quite a bit to offer as far as being able to look at your position and evaluate where your risk is and what you want to do for this trade and what your next move might be. The last thing I wanted to show you that we could build this as a complete Iron Condor position. If I was to come up here to the Add Simulated Trade again and just right click on the 135 put again, like I did the first time. But this time, instead of selling the vertical, I'm going to walk all the way down here to where it says Iron Condor. And if I left click now on Iron Condor, it's going to build me a default position, and it's giving me a certain credit here, but this credit is based on the default strikes that it gave. If I come over here, I wanted the put to be the 135 130. So I look down here and it's showing that I'm selling the 135 put and buying the 130 put. But when I come up to the call position, I wanted the 145 150, but by default it just gave me the next strike above the 135. So I have to come up here and left click on the 140 and change that to 145, and then left click on the one I'm buying, which is this second 145 now, since I just changed the one above it, and make that be 150. And now notice how it's giving me the $1.59 credit, because when you're doing the credit spreads or when you're doing the Iron Condor as a complete unit, they're giving you the mid price. So these two numbers are going to add up to this number. And you can put this order down here either way that you choose. And when you're ready to send the order, what you can do is you can just come over here to the outermost part on the right. And if I was to want to send the Iron Condor as a complete trade here for $1.59 credit, I left click over here and just scroll up to where it says confirm and send, and it would give me a window where I can review the trade, and it'll give me my max profit, my max loss on the trade. And here is where I can actually now notice that I have an error in my position, because when I built the position as two credit spreads, I built it using 4 contracts. And then when I built the Iron Condor position, I defaulted to the 2 contracts that we set up in the platform. Since I put the wrong number of contracts in, what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to come over here and close this window, which will allow my trade to stay remaining on my screen. And then I'm going to change the contracts to 4. And the good part about building it as a unit is it updates all of them at one time. If you're doing the credit spread separately, you would have to place the orders separately, and you would have to verify that you're changing the contracts and making sure you're getting the right quantity that you want. So now I'm coming up here to check and verify my information again, and it's showing that I'm selling 4 contracts. And I'm doing the 140, 145 calls. They're putting the calls first here, and then they're putting the puts second, the 135, 130 put. And let me just drag this window out of the way just to show you that we don't have the right trade again. What it did is I didn't update the 2 strikes on the call that I wanted. And this is something when you first start using the platform that may happen to you, where you need to take your time and practice. And I recommend placing sim trades just so you can get used to the platform, where you're going through perhaps a checklist of, did I verify the correct number of contracts? Did I make sure that the strikes for the calls are what I'm looking for? Did I make sure that the strikes for the puts are what I'm looking for? Is the month of expiration that I'm using correct? Is the price that I'm looking to get as my credit, is that what I'm expecting it to be? And after a while, it will become a mental checklist that you do. But in the beginning, it's probably a good idea to have a piece of paper or an index card with just those few bullet points of what to check and verify before you actually hit the send order. Because if I was to hit the send order right now, this is not the trade that I was looking to place. I did get the number of contracts right, but since I'm looking to do the 145, 150 call, I have to change these. So I'm going to have to close this window again, come over here and change this to 145, and come over here on the bottom one again, and now scroll it down to the 150. And now it looks like I'm getting the same credit as I was before. And now if I come over here and left click over here and hit confirm and send, now it's showing what makes sense more. It's showing me my strikes, the 145, 150, and the 135, 130 on the put side. It's showing me my max profit was 636, which is what we saw when we were looking at this line before. And my max risk, my max loss is 1364, which is what we were seeing when we were looking over here at the expiration risk over here. Now, if you were actually putting this trade on, you would probably have something set up where you would not want to lose 1364 to perhaps make 656. You would have a line in the sand based on a support level or an area on the chart where if it violated that area, you would perhaps exit the trade. This way your risk would be much less compared to what this absolute risk is down here. If you let the trade go this far where you're losing all this on the trade, and you let that happen all the time, then you would need to win maybe 3 times for every loss that you have on this, because you're not managing the trade right. So learning how to place the trades and set up the order entry and everything is the first part of trading. It's not the end all. You have to learn how to manage the trade if you want to be successful at this, and that's something that we'll cover down the road in another video. But for now, this has just hopefully been a good primer for you to get an idea and then develop your own skills on how to place these trades. Thank you very much. I hope this helped you.